So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to show you how to properly scale the damage on Atlas's Landslide, his first ability, because the ability itself is fairly unique. It's one of the few abilities that still uses a melee weapon as a stat stick. Now what does that mean actually? Well, it means that it takes some of the mods you put on the melee weapon and applies it to the ability. Which also means that it kind of doesn't matter which melee weapon you use, because it doesn't look at the stats of the melee weapon, with 3 exceptions. And those 3 exceptions are what you want to use if you want to min-max Landslide, but they don't make an enormous difference, so if you don't have them, it's not that big of a deal. Now, those 3 exceptions are the Venka Prime, the Mire, and either Cindo or Cindo Prime equipped with the Manticore skin. The Venka Prime is good because it has a 0.75 base combo counter instead of 0.5, and Landslide is affected by the combo counter, so this way you're gonna build it faster, so you're gonna get a higher multiplier from it. The Mire has 10% of its multiplied genetic damage added as toxin, and that will then be added to Landslide. And finally, the Manticore skin is one of the few skins that actually alter stats, because it reduces attack speed by 15% but increases damage by 15%. And this small damage increase is also added to Landslide. The strongest one of these, and the one that actually makes a noticeable difference, is the Venka Prime, especially if you're in an endless mission, because that extra 0.25 base multiplier on the combo is just gonna grow and grow and grow. But as I've said already, if you don't have either of these, it's not that big of a deal, because the vast majority of the damage is gonna come from the mods on your melee weapon and the amount of power strength you have on Atlas. Now, as far as the stat stick is concerned, this is pretty much the strongest thing you can put together if you're not using a Riven, and I will talk about that a little bit later. So, first of all, the stance doesn't matter, it's just there for the capacity. What does matter though is genetic damage, which is why we're using Prime Pressure Point and Spoiled Strike, then the combo counter, which is why we're using Body Count, and this is basically to increase our damage throughout the mission. Landslide already has its own sort of small combo counter, but that's for burst damage, this is for more sustained damage, okay? Then, since the base damage on Landslide is pure impact, we can also take advantage of some really strong mods that increase impact, like Primed Heavy Trauma and Collision Force. And finally, so that we're not doing pure impact, we can also add elemental mods, and the ones I go for is Molten Impact for heat and Primed Fever Strike with Shocking Touch for an enormous amount of corrosive damage. Now, this is not a good build for the weapon, and it's gonna be pretty much unusable, especially since we're not adding any attack speed and we're actually subtracting it with Spoiled Strike, but it does increase the damage of Landslide by a lot. As far as the Atlas setup is concerned, there's actually a very neat Zero Forma setup that you can do on the Prime that basically has everything you need. All it's missing is an Exiles mod, which isn't that big of a deal. The aura we're gonna use is Steel Charge, which gives us a ton of mod capacity so we can fit everything in, and it also increases melee damage by 60%, which is pretty good too. Then we're going to put in Ogre Secrets for the ability Strength, this is going to give us more damage on Landslide, and follow that up with a fully ranked Fleeting Expertise, which is going to give us all the efficiency we need at the cost of duration, which doesn't really matter because the combo counter on Landslide can't go below half a second. Then we're going to put in Umbra Fiber and Umbra Vitality for an enormous amount of defense, and we're going to put in a fully ranked Transient Fortitude, which reduces our duration even further, which once again doesn't matter, but it gives us a ton of strength. Next up, we need to take care of our energy generation so that we can Landslide all the time, and we're going to do that via Hunter Adrenaline, which will convert damage done to our health into energy. After that, we're going to put in Umbra Intensify, which is buffed by Umbra Fiber and Umbra Vitality to give us a stupid amount of strength, and we top it off with Adaptation so that as we take damage, we adapt to that damage and we take less of it in the future. Now, this build is not set in stone, simply put in as much defense and damage as you see fit. Just remember that you want a lot of efficiency because you want to be able to Landslide all the time, and you don't want to go below 100% power range because it increases the splash radius of Landslide. Now, the damage you can do once you put it all together is absolutely ridiculous, and it makes Landslide probably the strongest first ability in the game, even stronger than Nidus's first ability because of the sheer amount of AoE damage you can do with this from a cold start. And since we're almost maxed out on efficiency thanks to the fully ranked Fleeting Expertise and the fact that the second and third hit of the Landslide combo are cheaper than the first one, we can spam Landslide pretty much forever as long as the enemies either do a little bit of damage to us or we pick up an energy orb here and there. Also, the reason why we're not scaling crit or status on Landslide is because both the crit and status chance are only at 5% with a standard 200% multiplier, so it is not worth it. Though you can make this crit more reliably if you add an Adarza Kavad, because the Cat's Eye buff from the Adarza Kavad doesn't multiply crit, it adds base crit. So if, for whatever reason, you need this to do even more damage, the Adarzacavat is the way to go. Now, I briefly mentioned Rivens in the weapon build section, and yes, you can actually use a Riven to scale the damage of Landslide, but you can only use the kinds of stats we already used on the melee weapon to begin with, so genetic damage, impact damage, elemental damage, and combo duration. And this will most likely actually determine your choice of stat stick for Landslide, because if you have a Riven with maximum Riven disposition, it is the best thing you can add to a stat stick. It is stronger than anything else. And actually, funny enough, one of the 3 weapons that I showed you in the beginning does have perfect Riven disposition, the Mire. So if you have a Mire Riven and you roll it for a ton of genetic damage, impact damage, or elemental damage, you have yourself a best-in-slot stat stick for Atlas's Landslide. And there are 2 mods you can replace the Riven with. If it's just a buttload of damage, you replace Spoiled Strike, but if the Riven also has combo duration, you replace Body Count. And that is pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!